The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Training Camp Confidential, day number 10 of training camp with the Washington Commanders. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Day 10, a little rough, a little uneven. That's what we'll call it. A little uneven for this team. And there were reasons as to why, which raises a number of questions. Washington just made a couple of personnel moves. We're going to discuss those first on the top of the show. I want to go non-Commanders news, but this is family, right? So still sort of pseudo-Commanders news, but Sadique Charles, who was not re-signed this offseason after spending the duration of his rookie contract here in Washington after being drafted in the third round, I believe, of the 2020 draft. Signed with the Tennessee Titans this offseason, was taking starter reps at guard pretty much all camp. At the age of 25, decided to retire today. And I know that's got to be frustrating for the Titans, but more importantly, it's a sign that Sadique Charles just didn't feel like fighting anymore. He didn't have it in him. And some guys aren't cut out for this. You know, the wear and tear mentally that you go through, physically that you go through, the ability to overcome adversity, and the ability to just be able to stay in the fight. It's tough, and it's not for everybody. It is a mental and physical grind to play professional football. And not everybody is cut out for it. You see guys, especially this time of the year when it's camp time, you see guys every year decide, man, I don't want to do this shit no more. They retire. Guys don't report to camp. Guys show up for a couple of days and realize, I don't want to do this shit anymore. Guys go through, you know, a few weeks and they realize, man, I just don't have it in me no more, man. I don't have this in me anymore. So Sadique Charles retires. So a bid farewell to an old friend, old Sadique Charles, a guy that had so much untapped potential, but never really ever fulfilled the promise that was there, right? So now we get to Commanders news, and a couple of cuts, one with an injury designation, the other just flat out a cut. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't surprised by one of them, but on the other hand, not so much. Again, this is another one of these Rivera guys that didn't necessarily click and translate over to the next group. And so I literally was just talking about this guy not even an hour ago on the depth chart video. And here it is an hour later, he's getting cut. So tackle Alex Kingsbury was cut and waived with an injury designation. So he's no longer here. He wasn't going to make the team anyway. So another one of those fringe Rivera guys that was always around, never made the team, but always around. He's officially gone now. So that's probably the last we'll hear of Alex Kingsbury moving forward. However, the more important cut here was that of tight end Armani Rogers. Now, there was a soft spot within my cavity, right? My chest cavity. There was a soft spot behind my rib cage for Armani Rogers because of his athleticism and his upside. Extremely raw, having never played the tight end position prior to his first year in the league a couple of seasons ago. But he impressed us that year in 2022 when he burst onto the scene. First game of the season, catches a tight end screen, goes for about 20 yards, and we're like, uh-oh, we got something here. And, you know, you could see the athleticism. You could see that if this guy just continued to work at his craft, he could potentially be a problem in this league. Obviously, last camp, he tore his ACL last offseason, matter of fact, or I think it was his Achilles. Either way, Achilles is a lot worse than an ACL, and it takes a lot longer to kind of fully recover and get back to being your normal self. And I just don't think he was able to prove that he was ready to help this team now and maybe even into the future. And unfortunately, I talked about this, and this is what let me know. And I've been pretty much spot on with everything that has transpired to this point, because this group has been transparent and they've made it abundantly clear what they want in players and what they're looking for. And so I told you, all you got to do is give me the ingredients and I can go shopping. I can tell you what's going to happen as long as you're being truthful to me. And they've looked me in my eyes the entire time, and they've been upfront and transparent with me every step of the way. So I've been pretty much spot on. And I told y'all when I did my 53-man roster projection that I didn't think Armani Rogers was going to make this team, because Dan Quinn has been preaching physicality at the tight end position. Armani Rogers is 225 pounds, and he's coming off of an Achilles injury. He is not ready to be physical. He is not ready to show that athletically I should be here. So if you're not going to give me the physicality that I'm looking for in the run game and as a blocker, and you're not going to show me that elite athleticism that's supposed to separate you from Cole Turner, Ben Sinnott, Zach Ertz, and John Bates, then why are you here? And that's kind of the dilemma he found himself in, is that he wasn't able to show that elite athleticism because he's still coming off of that Achilles injury. So they didn't get to see the Armani Rogers we saw 2 years ago, right? They get here. He didn't have any tape from 2023. They probably went back and watched a little bit of him in 2022, but they weren't blown away enough to be where, hey, we're going to hold on to this kid and we're going to continue to work with him. They got Colson Yankoff that looks a lot like Armani Rogers, not quite the athlete that Armani Rogers is, okay? But that's their guy, and I keep telling you this, if it's all things are equal, both of them are 225 pounds. Both of them are extremely raw at the position. If it's between my guy and your guy, I'm taking my guy. And so Colson Yankoff offers them a lot of what Armani Rogers offers them, and they brought him here, and they're going to continue to work with him, and he'll probably end up on the practice squad. And Armani Rogers will have to go and try to continue his NFL journey somewhere else. I wish him the best of luck. I wish things could have went differently here, because he's so talented and the upside is through the roof, but the injury really prohibited him from growing and getting to a point where he could make it on this squad with this staff. That injury just came at the wrong time. So they signed, in conjunction with those moves, they signed center guard combo J.C. Hasenauer to come in here. And that move strikes me a lot like the move of Taylor Stallworth being signed at defensive tackle. With the way that the injury situation has been going with Cosme and, with the tackles and things of that nature, you may have to start, moving guys around. You may have to start playing musical chairs. With that said, they want to bring in some more guys that may be able to take some of the reps off of the plate of some of the veterans, or they may not be overly impressed with what they have, all the way in the back end of the roster on the offensive line. So they want to bring in a guy that can come in and maybe help do some of the lifting to help them get to the starting blocks, as I like to say. In week one, you want to get there as healthy as you possibly can. So again, don't see JC Hasenauer making this team, but I do see him helping us get to the starting blocks with all of our stuff, similar to Taylor Stallworth at the defensive tackle position. So at the end of the day, moves have been made. And as you can see, another one bites the dust, even though he wasn't a draft pick. Another Rivera guy bites the dust. So they're continuing to clean house. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and they continue to show you better than I can tell you. If all things are equal, and there hasn't been any clear space or separation created, if all things are equal and guys are on an equal playing field, and they have to choose between a guy that was here because of the previous regime or a guy that they brought in here, whether he's going to make the team or not, or whether he's going to be on a practice squad or not. If they have to make that decision, they're going to go with the guy that they brought here. And this is another example of that. Because they could have cut Colson Yankoff. He's undrafted. But they brought him here. He offers them more value right now. So that's the guy that they're going with. So, again, just another example of them shedding off more Rivera dead weight and continuing to add guys that they want to add on this roster. So, let's get into, look, today was a big day. We got the unofficial Deppy. We heard from both coordinators and the head coach. So today was a big day. Practice, not so much, right? This kind of felt like one of those practices. Let's just get this over with so we can get to New Jersey and get to the joint practice. So let me talk about the schedule real quick, because I was way off on the scheduling for the joint practice. I thought it was with an S, joint practices. It's just one, joint practice, okay, on Thursday. So the schedule is practice today, off tomorrow, practice, joint practice with the Jets on Thursday, off Friday, game on Saturday. That's the schedule for the rest of this week. So that's what it looks like. So tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll go live tomorrow night and we will preview the joint practice with the Jets. We'll talk about, things that we're looking for from that particular practice, what to expect, certain positions that need to stand out, and those sort of things, obviously. And then we will wait to hear back from those in attendance, kind of delivering the news to us as to how things went, what it looked like, this, that, and the third. And we'll react to that, obviously, on Thursday night, among other things, because there's going to be preseason football on Thursday, Friday, Saturday will be one of those games on Saturday, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what it'll look like the remainder of the week. But day 10 of training camp practice, which was the last day that fans would be in attendance at training camp. So it kind of felt like it went fast, right? And, unlike past years where there was that one night where they had practice under the lights at FedEx, now Commanders Field, guess they're not doing that this year. But nonetheless, this was the last day for the fans out there. And, they got a treat. Darrell Green and head coach Coach Gibbs, were in attendance for this final practice. And Dan Quinn talked about that a little bit in his presser. So I think we'll expound upon that more when we get to head coach Dan Quinn and what he had to say. But for today's practice, I talked about the uneven nature of it. The reason that it was uneven is because the offensive line was in flux. We knew that Cosme had been out here the last day or two. He was out again. So now we got official word he's dealing with an illness. So because it kind of was sudden, we didn't get anything. We didn't know what he was dealing with. So he's dealing with an illness. So he's missed the last two practices. Andrew Wiley dealing with the tightness that we've talked about over really the last week and a half or so of camp, where he's kind of been in and out of the lineup in terms of team drills. Again, he did not participate in team drills. So he was out of the lineup. And then Brandon Coleman. And we have no idea what happened here and why he did not practice today, but he was not in attendance here. And so that left the offensive line without 3 of its 5 potential starters. So obviously that caused a bit of confusion up front. A lot of adjusting had to take place. And this is where you get into the depth conversation with this offensive line. And we're going to talk about that here today, because that's where I think, I've told you this already, I don't think this offensive line is going to be bad. I don't think it's going to be as big of a weak link as a lot of you think. If, let me say it one more time, if they are healthy. This is what scares me half to death right here. If we have to start tapping into depth at a positional group that is already not great to begin with, if we start going into the reserve bank, that's when you get into trouble. Okay. When you're a team like us right now, for where we are in our process. The biggest thing that can cripple us, the thing that can bring us to our knees the fastest is injuries. Because when you're at the ground level of in that foundational stage of building up your roster and your organization, you don't have depth. You have frontline guys that can get it done, but your depth is not great. And so this is the biggest thing. If you're a fan of this team and you're worried, this is what should worry you, is the guys behind the starters. I'm not worried about our starters. I think our starters can play with most teams in the league and compete and give themselves a chance to win. It's if we got to start tapping. I've talked about it. What happens if something happens to Mike Sainristil. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. We're back to where we were before when we didn't have a nickel corner, essentially. So this offensive line group was – so what it looked like today across the board from left to right, Cornelius Lucas was your starting left tackle. Nick Allegretti was at left guard. Tyler Biadasz, so those are the only two that were there that are going to be there, theoretically speaking, when they're healthy, was at center. At right guard, you had Michael Dieter. And at right tackle, you had Trenton Scott. So that is not an ideal offensive line group. That is not an offensive line group that you can win consistently with. Okay. Reportedly at practice today, Trent Scott was going through it, had a bunch of holding penalties that could have been called, some that were called. And the offense was just dominated. The offensive line in particular was dominated by the defensive line. That's the second day in a row. And that's the second day in a row that we've had, this kind of turmoil up front. Remember, no Cosme and Wiley yesterday forced, the shuffling of the offensive line. Now you add in Coleman today, and it was way worse. But yesterday it was bad offensive line wise. Today it wasn't much better. So the defensive line, and I want to hear that. I want to hear that these backups are in and the defensive line kicked their ass. I do want to hear that. That's a good thing. It's bad for the offense, but it's good that to know that, hey, if they put some inferior shit in front of our guys up front, they're going to kick their ass. That's what I want to hear, right? So today, and I talk about adjusting. Today was all about adjustments being made. They had to adjust the offensive line. They also adjusted practice. Today was supposed to be full pads. With a day off tomorrow, they could go full pads today, get the day off, and then head to New York or New Jersey and take on the Jets for a joint practice. They scaled them back. They went with shells because of all of the injuries on the offensive line. So they scaled back practice a bit. And instead of going full pads, they went with shells today. Jaden wasn't his sharpest, as you could imagine. There were a number of plays where the reports were, hey, I don't know, he might have been sacked on that play. Obviously he threw the football because you can't hit him. But if he actually was live, I don't know if he gets that ball off or if he has to leave the pocket and scramble because there was pressure in his face. But one of his best throws of the day was to Zach Ertz on a deep out. Ertz made a one-hand grab on Jeremy Reeves. It was a highlight type catch. And then Jaden also had a deep ball to Bryson Tremaine later on in practice. This time, Bryson Tremaine was able to make a deep ball catch over Michael Davis as he continues to make plays, man. Again, preseason is going to be big for Bryson Tremaine because I know he can help on special teams. He's proving that he can make plays in practice. Can he do so when it counts most in these preseason games? That's when we'll be able to see if he, in fact, is going to be truly in this competition for a roster spot. The defense forced a couple of turnovers, which is music to my ears because we really haven't heard. And, it's like a double-edged sword, so to speak, because on one end, you're like, yo, I don't really want to hear Jaden threw 2 interceptions today and there were 3 fumbles. You really don't want to hear that shit. But on the other end, you're like, yo, when are we going to start like, I wouldn't mind if they told me, hey, Marcus Mariota got picked off twice today and they forced, Rosamie Jack Saint a fumble or they forced Luke McCaffrey to fumble or some shit like that. Like guys that, are kind of off the off of the starting radar guys that we don't think we're going to be asked to have massive contributions for the team right away or at all, right? I wouldn't mind hearing that the first team defense forced turnovers from some of those guys, but we're just not hearing about turnovers at all, really. We haven't talked about a turnover being forced probably in like 2 days now, where Tyler Owens had a pick, and that was third team against third team violence. That wasn't first team or second team, right? So probably got to go all the way back to like day 3 of camp. The last time we talked about the defense generating turnovers, Frankie Louvu forced a fumble. I think it was Zach Ertz and recovered it, and then Mikey Samerstill forced a fumble down the field on a punch out of one of the receivers. So I think you got to go. Or matter of fact, I think it was one of the running backs. I think it was Byron Robinson Jr. that he ran down the field and Don Beebe style punched that thing out from behind. So we haven't talked about turnovers being forced in a while from the defense. So it was good to hear that the defense forced a couple of turnovers today. One on a punch out, which that's something that we just don't do around here. And that's something that has to be emphasized. And guys got to be looking to punch the football out, because we don't look for them here in Washington. So there was a punch out today and there was an interception. So that's good on the defensive side. And, again, it's a double-edged sword, because on one end, you want to hear that the defense is creating turnovers. On the other end, you're like, you don't want the offense, falling into bad habits and turning the football over. But it's good to hear that the defense generated some turnovers today. Kicking competition update. I told you every single day of camp, we're going to update the kicking situation, because it's probably the most heated competition that is left in terms of this roster for a starting spot. Now, obviously, there are still spots that aren't spoken for yet, that don't have a clear-cut, decisive and definitive name there, but a guy that is kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the pack, and he just needs to solidify. We have a bunch of those. This is the only one that is really like head-to-head. Either you're going to get the job or you're going to get the job. And again, there could be another kicker that's not here now that could end up getting the job if both of these guys don't step it up. But today, both kickers went 4 of 5 in team period, which brings the overall total to Ramiz Ahmed at 17 of 20 and Riley Patterson at 16 of 20. So really no clear separation between the two kickers. We still haven't had a kicker make all 5 kicks since the first day that Patterson showed up. Every day since, and there's been 4 days, 5 kicks each day. They've each missed at least 1 kick, with Patterson missing 2 kicks 2 practices ago. Ahmed misses 1 kick every day. And so there hasn't been that consistency of, hey, I'm going to go ahead and knock all 5 of mine in, right? So, again, the games are really going to go a long way in determining that, and the kickoff. Remember, you got to kick it in that landing zone. Those two, things are probably going to go a long way in determining who's going to ultimately be the kicker for this team. My money's still on Riley Patterson. I don't like Riley Patterson, though. So I'm not a Riley Patterson fan, but at this point, I feel like I'm choosing the lesser of 2 evils. But we'll see. Again, a lot to be determined there. They could easily sign a kicker a week and a half from now, and that guy end up being our kicker week 1. So we will see. So that is essentially practice for today. Now let's get into what was said by the coordinators and then the head coach. So we heard from the coordinators for the first time since the start of training camp. We really haven't heard from the coordinators since probably OTAs. I don't think we heard from them at all during minicamp. So I think the last time we heard from these guys was OTA. So it was really good to hear from Kliff Kingsbury, to see how he was feeling about how things have been going during training camp. And same could be said for defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr. So Kliff Kingsbury talked about a number of topics. Obviously, Jayden Daniels was at the top of the pile, right? But he talked about Jayden Daniels and, how he's been impressed by a lot of the things he's brought to the table. He talked about the consistency, which has really been impressive. Day after day after day, he's stacking really good practices, really good decision-making, really good command of the offense day after day after day. He said that, he has no idea what Jayden is doing from a study habit standpoint, but it is off the charts. He's like, I don't know what this kid is doing. He must be studying all night, because this dude is coming in, and the next morning when we ask him about some of the install, he's got it. He's bam, 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 and he wants more. So he's like, I don't know what he's doing, but this kid is all over it from a study habit standpoint, which we've heard. He's showing up at 5:45 in the morning. He's staying late. So he's been consistent in putting in the time and the effort. And that's part of what Kliff Kingsbury said. He's paying the cost to be a good quarterback in this league by putting in the time, putting in the work, putting in the effort. And you're seeing him bear fruit from all of these things that he's doing to prepare himself, to give him the best chance to be successful and get on the field and be successful sooner rather than later. We've heard Dan Quinn talk about it, and we're going to talk about it again today, that Jayden Daniels has earned the right to be QB1 going into this first preseason game. And you heard Kliff Kingsbury pretty much echo those sentiments. Kliff Kingsbury talked about they're going to be very vanilla offensively, which you would expect. I don't want Steve Spurrier coming out here and putting up 50 against the 49ers in Osaka, Japan, whipping out all of his best plays, right? Getting in his Sunday's finest for a preseason game that means absolutely nothing, right? Somebody forgot to give old ball coach Steve Spurrier the memo that, hey, this shit don't count, right? So Kliff is like, yeah, we're not going to be showing too much of anything. I just want them to go out and execute the things that we asked them to do. And we're not really going to be showing a lot. We haven't showed a lot in practice, right? And we're definitely not going to show a lot in these joint practices nor the preseason games, which, we expect that. So he talked about Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson, but specifically Austin Eckler. He talked about how he said, the question was framed as, Eck had a down year last year, and how has he looked in camp, and how is he going to, play off of Brian Robinson Jr., and how is that dynamic going to work? And he was like, well, the whole down year Eck thing, I didn't see the shit, because he's like, I watched the tape from last year and I was like, this guy's incredible. He's like, I wasn't scouting him for free agency because I didn't think we'd be able to get him. And then when we got him, I was surprised and I was shocked, and I get the guy out here and he looks just as good as he looked on tape and as good as he's looked over the years. This is a 100-catch guy out of the backfield. And, the things that this guy can do is limitless. And I'm so glad that we've got him. And he's like, it's a really good, combination back there. You got a power back in Brian Robinson, who has tremendous hands. I was so glad to hear him say that, because that was the first time that one of these coaches finally acknowledged, hey, Brian Robinson can catch the damn football, right? So he's like, we got this big power back that can catch the football out of the backfield, and then we got a guy that's a scat back that's a little bit more, dynamic and twitchy, that's, a better receiver out of the backfield that can do so many different things. And I think it's going to be a really good combination back there, the two of those guys together. So I'm really excited, because for years we've been hearing about the versatility of a back. In that case, it was Antonio Gibson and what they were going to do with him. And then we never saw the shit, whether it was Scott Turner or Eric Bieniemy last year. We just never saw that versatility really rear its head. Like, we got versatility, Antonio Gibson in one game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, week 1 of the 2022 season, and then we never saw the shit again. Like, we said, if that's the Antonio Gibson we're getting, boy, the league better watch out. And we just never got it again, right? Hopefully we get it with Eckler. Kliff Kingsbury talked about Brandon Coleman, and the first thing he said was, man, this rookie class has been impressive. Obviously there are a number of rookies on that side of the ball. Coleman, obviously Jayden Daniels. You got Luke McCaffrey as well. That's on the offensive side. So he's like, this group has been really impressive. And Ben Sinnott, don't forget about him. So he's like, Coleman has been exceptional. He said, the thing that we were really excited about with him was, we knew he was a great athlete. We knew that he could, play both sides. We put him at right tackle in one instance, and he handled that flawlessly. But he said what's been really impressive is that the technique that they've taught him, he's kind of just inhaled that and digested that, and he's been able to then display it out on the field. He said a lot of times you get guys fresh out of college and they've been doing something one way for so long that it's hard to rewire their body to do it a different way. And it takes them a while to do it the way that you asked them to do it. And so that adjustment period takes them a while, and that ultimately stops them from getting on the field. But he's like, this guy has come in, he's accepted the coaching, he's taken that coaching, it's translated out to the field, and he's been really consistent, and we're really excited to see what he does in these joint practices, or this joint practice, and then hopefully the game against the Jets. Kliff Kingsbury talked about separation at the wide receiver position, and he really was like, look, it's really right now Jahan and Terry, and then this it's everybody else. Like right now, there really isn't true separation. Now, he said it's a good group overall, but it's those two guys, and then it's everybody else. So I've been trying to put it into this, and I still feel confident that 5 receivers are spoken for spots wise on this roster. You know, Terry, Jahan, Luke, Diami, and Olamide Zaccheaus. But he's like, look, it's 2 dudes, and then it's everybody else. And everybody's got to get in where they fit in. And he said the preseason is going to speak volumes as to how the roster ultimately shapes up at the receiver position, because there really hasn't been that clear delineation between, you know, the first 3 or 4 or 5 guys and then the rest of everybody else. I still think that that's the case. But he talked about Jahan specifically. We'll get to him in a little bit because he had a specific Jahan question, but he said that Jaden is starting to really establish a rapport with both Terry and Jahan. And so that's a good thing. And I told you, the more reps he gets with the first team, which I thought it was very important that they start giving him more of those first team reps so that he can start to establish that rapport. And that's been taking place. Zach Ertz had brought it up very early in camp, like after the day 2 of camp or so, where he said, I haven't had a lot of reps with Jaden. And I was like, that has to change. And we're seeing that change. And you're starting to see that there's a rapport being established between he and the guys that he's going to be throwing the football to. He also mentioned that Olamide Zaccheaus is versatile, you know, and the ability to play inside and outside is going to be key for a lot of these receivers. And so he did mention that as well. On Jaden Daniels protecting himself, Kliff got a little chuckle, and Kliff was good at the presser. He wasn't standoffish. There was no, negative energy or no bad juju or any of that. He was all smiles. He embraced every question. He answered every question. Maybe that's who he is. Maybe they just caught him on a rough day, or maybe somebody just rubbed him the wrong way with a question or something the last time, because he was really good this time, right? And so he talked about Jaden protecting himself, and he laughed because he's like, yeah, we've had those conversations, right, about him protecting himself. And he's like, Jaden's a competitor, so there's been a little bit of back and forth there. But he knows he's got to protect himself. He knows what his value is to this team, and that he's very important to the success of this team. And so we need him upright. He's going to have to take care of himself. So he talked about that, right? Then he said Marcus Mariota is probably the best teammate that he could have, because Marcus himself, very similar background. I've talked about this when we signed Marcus Mariota, and I know there's going to be a few of you out there that say, well, actually Marcus Mariota wasn't the first choice. We've established that already. They did try to sign Sam Darnold. I am aware, but I think everything happens for a reason. I'm a big everything happens for a reason guy. And I think Marcus Mariota ended up here for a reason, because of the Heisman Trophy, comparison, because of the number 2 overall pick, because being thrusted into the, quarterback of the future, face of the franchise role, and how that affects you. And then also that they share the same kind of game, and that their game, is largely predicated on, their ability to throw the football, but also their wheels and their ability to use their athleticism to extend plays and make things happen when the play breaks down. So he's like, Marcus is also being able to give him advice on, hey, don't try to be Superman, bro. You got to stay healthy. You can't be out here taking unnecessary risks. So he talked about, Marcus Mariota's role in that as well. He was asked, when did he know that Jaden was ready to be the guy? And he said, just looking at the consistency of what he was doing, his work habits, how he came in, how he was prepared, how his teammates gravitated towards him. You know, you could just tell that there was an aura around this kid and that he got it from day one. And it's just been consistent day after day. He's stacking good days on top of each other. And at this point now, they just want to see him do it against another team, against some strangers, some funny lookings. So we'll see that on Thursday for the first time. On Jahan Dotson, Kliff Kingsbury said that Jahan's a very good route runner. He got really good hands. And he said the biggest thing for Jahan is that his ability to move around the formation is going to allow them to put him in positions to get the football in space so that he can be dynamic. He said one thing that is really encouraging right now is that he is really building a rapport with Jaden. And he said that every year of Jahan Dotson's career to this point, he's had a brand new offense. So he said it's been tough on him to continue to have to keep learning new offenses year after year after year. He had the Scott Turner offense in his rookie season, obviously Eric Bieniemy last year, and now he's got Kliff Kingsbury. So, you know, it'll be good for him to just settle into an offense. Hopefully this will be the one. But Kliff is like, there's a lot of talent there, and we're looking to tap into Jahan Dotson because at the end of the day, Terry McLaurin needs a running mate. There needs to be pressure taken off of Terry. Too often teams are able to come in here and say, hey, let's take 17 away and make one of these other dudes beat us. And it's not often that somebody else is able to do it. Not that it has to be one guy. It can be a collective group. It can be the tight ends collectively with a receiver and a back. Whatever. We just need Terry to have some help. It would be great if he had a running mate at receiver. It's time for Jahan to step up, and hopefully it happens this season. Offensive line concerns. So Kliff was specifically asked, you know, the fans out there have concerns about the offensive line. What would you tell them? And he's like, look, it's a war of attrition. And today's practice was a microcosm of what the NFL season looks like. You're hoping that we don't have to go through this type of shit during the season where you got 3 out of 5 offensive linemen down and you got to figure it out because our team and our roster is not built to deal with more than one injury on the offensive line at a time. If we got to start tapping into depth on the offensive line and 2 guys or more are out, we are in trouble. And then I'm leaning on Kliff to say, hey, bro, you're going to have to figure out a way to get it out of Jaden's hands quickly because he can't sit back there behind this offensive line group, right? So he talked about that this is the hardest working group in the building. And he said, if you're a fan out there, take solace in knowing that no group is going to work harder than the offensive line, but it is a war of attrition and health is key and it is important, as we all know. And so he's like, you know, this group is going to work hard and they're going to be fine this upcoming season. I believe that. If they're healthy, I think this group is going to be fine. If they're healthy. I can't state that enough. He talked about Zach Ertz, and we know that they have a great relationship. That's the reason why Ertz is even here. He's made that abundantly clear multiple times that the reason he came here was because he wanted to play for Kliff Kingsbury and play in his offense. Yet again, he did it in Arizona. And so he talked about how QB friendly Zach Ertz is. And Ertz has talked about that himself, how he wants to make himself a friendly target for the quarterback, how he wants to communicate with Jaden Daniels. And so they have this rapport that, hey, this is what you're seeing. This is what I'm seeing. I need to know your perspective so I can adjust to what you're seeing so I can be a better target for you, right? And Ertz has talked about that from the jump. And he said that Ertz is great at making himself available for the quarterback. He's a great route runner. He's very savvy. He just gets it. He's very nuanced. So there's a lot of good things that you get from Zach Ertz. And he said he's glad to have him on board yet again. And then Kliff Kingsbury finished up by talking about, you know, what he was really looking for from these joint practices with the Jets in particular. You know, obviously he said Jaden's development, you know, the mental grind that comes along with, you know, joint practices and playing against other teams. Mistakes will be made. How does he overcome that? Get to that next play mentality. So he's looking for that. But he said specifically, he really wants to see these young offensive linemen and how they perform against a defense like the Jets. There's been a lot made of the growth of some of these offensive linemen. Nick Allegretti isn't like super young in NFL years necessarily, but in terms of starting experience, he's a rookie essentially. He's never been a starter in this league. So by definition, he's sort of young at the position, so to speak. Obviously, Coleman is a rookie, right? And so you want to see Cosme's only in year 2 of playing guard. So you really want to see how these guys function against a high-level defensive line in particular, like the Jets. And he's really wanting to see how not just the starting group, but some of the guys behind them, a lot of young offensive linemen behind the starters, how do they fare when they get their turns as well? So we get to Joe Whitt Jr. And, you know, we had been waiting on this presser for a while because he's a high energy guy, no nonsense, cuts the bullshit, gets straight to the reels. And there's not a lot of fluff with Joe Whitt Jr. And that's what I got from this press conference again. You know, he started off his press conference by talking about this being a now and next league. And I loved the way he described this. This is something that I'll probably use moving forward. He said it's a now and a next league. He said you play now to create your next opportunity in this league. What you do now will create your next opportunity. And he didn't just stop there, because when you think about it from that context, from that lens, you're thinking about it from a player standpoint of, all right, if I'm a young guy fighting for my NFL life, what I do now is going to create my next opportunity, whether it's here with Washington or with some other team or on the practice squad, which will give me another opportunity maybe down the road. But he even went as far as to say, what you do now prepares you for the season. And what you do in the season gives you a chance to maybe make it to the playoffs. And if you make it to the playoffs, what you do in the playoffs gives you an opportunity to potentially make it to the Super Bowl. Like, it is a now and a next league. Right? What you do now prepares you for what's next. What you do now gives you a chance to do something big next, but you got to do it now first. What you do now is going to give you a chance to get that next contract, right? So I thought that was a great way to start his press conference. Then he went from there and opened up the floor to the media. And they asked him, right now, what are you feeling good about with your defense? What have you seen that makes you feel good? And he said, I feel good about the speed of the defense and the physicality up front. Those are the two things that have jumped out at him thus far. He said, we're flying around. We're playing fast. You know, the physicality up front with that defensive line looks really good to me. But then conversely, he said something that I need more of. And this, I was glad to hear him say it, but I also was like, damn, they're not out there executing yet. But it's a process, right? And we ain't got nothing but time. He said he wants more ball production. They're not taking it away enough right now. He said, now we did have 2 turnovers in practice, and I told you about those 2 turnovers today. He said we did generate a couple of turnovers today, so that was good to see. But he's like, I need them to take the ball away more. It's something that we stress, that we emphasize, and guys got to be looking to take that football away. So he wants more ball production. He's on Bobby Wagner. You know, so much has been made of his age, and, you know, he may not be the same Bobby Wagner. He may have lost a step, this, that, and the third. He's like, I don't know what the hell y'all talking about. This whole lost a step, can't do this, can't do it. I don't know what the hell y'all talking about, because he can do everything. He looks like the same Bobby Wagner to me. This guy's out here moving at practice. He's the first one in drills. I told him at one point, hey, Bobby, on these chase drills, right, these pursuit drills where we chasing guys down the field so we can, you know, have these guys hustling. You don't got to do that, bro. I know what you about. You in year 13. Don't worry about that shit. And he said, Bobby told him, nah, I'm good, bro. And he's like, Bobby's the first one to turn in pursuit in these drills. And he's showing these young guys how to do it. And so he's like, Bobby can do everything. He's consistent. The tackling's there. He's getting guys lined up. He knows where to be. He's like, Bobby is another coach. He said, Bobby's making checks that we haven't even put in yet. And he said, we tell guys that you can listen to the offense speak with your eyes. They'll tell you what they're doing by their formation and how they're aligned if you're watching enough film and you're locked in. And he's like, Bobby hears what the offense is saying with his eyes, and he's able to make checks that we haven't even put in yet. So you're getting that quarterback of the defense. And he's like, Bobby's like another coach on the field. So you love to hear it. He talked about Mike Sainristil, the rookie, and he said, man, he has come in and he has really taken a hold of that star position. So they call their nickel the star position in the defense. And he's like, there has to be the utmost level of communication between our safeties, our corners, and the star, right? And he's like, and the linebackers to a lesser degree, but the linebackers have to communicate as well. But he's like, the star has to be kind of the connective piece between the linebackers and the safeties and the corners, because he's the guy kind of in the middle of all of that. The corners are out here, the safeties are back there, the linebackers are out here or inside, and the star guy, your nickel, is right in the middle of all three of them. If it's a triangle, if you look at it as a triangle, linebacker inside, safety up top, corner outside, the guy that's in the middle of all of that, right in the middle, is the nickel, right? Or the star, right? So he's like the connective piece to the secondary and the linebackers. And he's like, this kid has jumped in here and done everything we've asked of him and then exceeded that. He's not operating like a rookie. He's come in here and he's been everything that we thought he could be and then some. We've been really impressed with his communication, how he carries himself on the field, his work ethic off the field. He's like, this dude is legit, and we feel like we got ourselves one in Mike Sainristil. And that's all we've heard about him all off-season long, especially all training camp long. So not a surprise there. On Jamin Davis, we knew they were going to ask about Jamin Davis. We knew they were going to ask about Emmanuel Forbes. On Jamin Davis, he said that, Jamin is a big physical specimen that they feel like is making strides as an edge rusher. He said the thing that he's impressed by with Jamin is he's starting to get better against the run. And he's starting to really grasp the concepts of twists and stunts, and because that's what's going to help Jamin get to the quarterback. We've talked about when Jamin gets free, and there aren't many guys in this league with faster closing ability than Jamin Davis. If you can get him unabated to the quarterback, look out, right? I haven't seen many quarterbacks get away from him once he gets free and he gets to turn on that acceleration. So he's talked about him grasping, a lot of the things that they've asked him to do as a defensive end / edge rusher. But he's like, he's a versatile guy that can do a lot of different things. And they're pleased with the growth that they've seen from him thus far in camp. He talked about Quan Martin. And he was like, they were trying to get him to give Quan Martin like extra praise. And he's like, look, I don't really know, like, what are you really asking me here? Because you're trying to get me to prop up Quan Martin in a way that I haven't done with any other player, and I'm not doing that. So what are you asking? What's your question about Quan Martin? And then, so they asked about his versatility, and he's like, you know what? With young players, a lot of times we don't want to overwhelm them, because at the end of the day, we want guys playing as fast as they possibly can. We've heard that from Dan Quinn over and over again. We need guys to go. We want guys to play with reckless abandon, but obviously you want them to play under control and do their assignments. But we want guys playing at 110 miles an hour. We want guys playing at maximum speed all the time, right? You remember Quinn said yesterday, you manage the focus, I'll manage the reps. Go as hard as you can for as many reps as we put you out there. We'll manage the amount of reps. We'll make sure you don't overwork yourself. But you go as hard as you can when you're out there. That's essentially what they want from Quan Martin. And he said, we really haven't been moving him around. He said, now the last group put him down in the slot and he could play over tight ends and things of that nature. So we do know that that's in his tool belt, but we really just got him back there playing free safety, which is what Dan Quinn told us. We just got him playing free safety. We love his range. We love his tackling ability. We don't want him thinking. We want him playing fast. So we really haven't been asking him to do too much. Just play free safety and be the best version of Quan Martin back there that you can be. On Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, he is very pleased with those guys. And he brought up something that I brought up to you guys 2 weeks ago, maybe at the very start of camp, when we were hearing about the defensive line and how they were playing. Jonathan Allen spoke, and then Daron spoke like maybe the day or two afterwards. And this is what I gathered from them. I told you, I said, man, I'm telling you right now, Daron Payne went out of his way in his press conference to say, man, you know, I'm really enjoying playing with Klee and Dorrance and all of these dudes and playing with these different edge rushers. And I took that as translation. We're rushing as a unit. There's no selfishness going on. There's selflessness going on. Everybody's playing for one another. Nobody's out here for self trying to get stats. Like if there's a twist and you got to give yourself up to take two so somebody can loop around and come scot-free, guys are doing that, right? And so when he got to John Allen and Daron Payne, he talked about the unselfishness on the defensive line. He's like, these guys are rushing as one. Remember when Warren Sapp showed up last year and his message to that group was, hey, y'all can be the most dominant group in the NFL, but y'all have to rush as one. You know, can't be four dudes rushing as independent contractors. Y'all need to be rushing as one. And Joe Whitt Jr. said that's what he's seeing. And he's loving what he's getting from J.A. He's loving what he's getting from Payne. And he's loving what they're doing as a collective group up front. And he talked about that a little bit later on, and I'll expand upon that. But he's like, I'm loving what I'm getting from Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. He talked about the cornerbacks and what he's looking for from them at the joint practice. And he said, with this group, he's looking for these guys to continue to grow in the system. He said the coaching staff is doing a great job of working with them to try to get them to understand what it is they're looking for from them. And I think what is ultimately going to be the most important outside of tackling and things of that nature with this group is they got to understand what they have to take away, right? He said that it is important that they understand what we're looking to do. In certain coverages, we're taking this away. If they want to take that, they want to have that, they can have that. You know, if they want the 5-yard out, we'll get them the 5-yard out. We won't give a shit about that. But if they run that post and we're telling y'all to rob that post, to take that post away, jump it, be aggressive, attack it, you need to do that, right? Don't worry about that out. We telling y'all, if they take the out, they got the out, it's cool. We're not tripping about that. That's not what's going to get us beat. What's going to get us beat is if you don't jump this post. What's going to get us beat is if you're not underneath this corner route. And we told you, look for the corner here. When they like to run this smash concept, they want to get to this corner. Look for it. Jump it. Be aggressive. So he said he's looking to see these guys in the joint practices. Specifically, they're not going to do anything special. He's like, we're not going to be exotic. We're not going to go in there doing a bunch of blitz and all of that. Not in the game, not in the joint practices. What I want to see is dudes mano-a-mano, one-on-one. How do they hold up against other receivers that they haven't seen? You know, things of that nature. I want to see how they hold up in you know, one-on-one coverage. What can we do with you? What can we not do? Like, we're going to find out more of those things now as we get into these joint practices. So he talked about what's the most important things that you need from this defense. And he said aggression, effort, and speed. And he said, you know, words are words. And he said all that other stuff is bullshit. Like, I can sit here and talk till my face turns blue about ball is life, playing fast and physical, you know, all of that stuff. Those are just words. It's going to be the players on the field showing the action that's going to ultimately make the difference. Again, words that are music to our ears because we've gotten lip service from the last group, you know, whether it was Bieniemy or it was Turner, or it was Jack Del Rio, or it was Rivera himself. We got a ton of lip service from the last group. They could sell us a dream every week. They could sell us a new dream. He's like, I ain't really trying to talk a bunch about what I'm looking for. I need them to go out and do it. I need them to be aggressive. I need them to give me all of their effort on every single snap that they're out there, and I need them to play as fast as they humanly possibly can. That's what's going to generate the type of results that we're looking for. Aggressive effort with speed. On Emmanuel Forbes, he talked about him continuing to develop. He's like, Jason Simmons has worked very closely with him on trying to get him where they need him to be from a mentality standpoint and also a technical standpoint. And he's like, Jason Simmons has been doing a great job with him, and they're going to continue to work with him to get him where they need to be. They said he's putting in the work, and they feel good about the progress that is being made. But he didn't do the thing that he did with Mike Sainristil, right? Where he went over the top with his praise and all of the things that they've asked him to do and how he's doing it. He just said the same thing he said about Forbes the last time we heard from him, which is he's working hard. He's doing everything we asked him to do, and the young man is coming along. That's all he said. So it doesn't instill a ton of confidence in me. I'm going to be honest with you, but it doesn't make me feel any worse about him. I'm just kind of like, meh. I'm just kind of like, all right, I guess we just see when we get on the field, we'll see. You know, when they get on the field, excuse me, I guess we'll see, right? I don't have any real expectations for Emmanuel Forbes right now. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't. So Ball is Life was brought up twice, and I'm going to tell you about both of those situations. So he explained what the Ball is Life meaning is first. And he said, the Ball is Life meaning is essentially, we need the ball like I need food to feed my kids and my family. The ball is food. If we don't have it, we don't eat. So it's very simple. If a running back has the ball, we're not able to eat. We got to take it from him. We got to take food off his plate and put it on our plate, or else we don't eat. All right. So we look at the ball as an extension of life. If we don't have it, we can't survive. Just like you don't have nourishment for your body, you can't survive. We don't have the ball, we can't survive. So he went into specific detail as to what Ball is Life actually means. He talked about the defensive line overall, and that was the unselfish comment that he made. And that goes back to what I was talking about with you guys 2 weeks ago, when I kind of just drew an inference, just listening to John Allen, listening to Daron Payne talk about the group that they're playing with now. You don't have a Daron or a Montez Sweat or a Chase Young who's out for self, right? Who's freelancing, doing their own thing, who might not be running the twist and the stunt as tight as you should to really command the kind of double team or eat the kind of space up that is necessary to create an opportunity for somebody else to come scot-free to get to the quarterback. I think with these guys, you're going to see selfless behavior. You're going to see an unselfish group going up and everybody playing for one another, playing as one. And that's going to lead to a lot of pressure on the quarterback. I really, truly believe that you're going to see this group come alive this year. And then when you throw in a Frankie Louvu and you throw in a Dante Fowler Jr. and the ability to blitz, a Mikey Sainristil coming off the nickel, I think you're going to see a defense that's going to really have a chance to be disruptive up front around the line of scrimmage, not just getting after quarterbacks, but also getting to the ball carrier. I think you're going to see an aggressive group that's going to be flying around up front. And then he talked about the mentality shift with Ball is Life. Like it's because the question was posed, Ball is Life. Is it more of a mentality or is it more of like repetition, having to do it over and over again? And he said it's a mentality. And I've told you guys this. Jack Del Rio used to tell us all the time, we got takeover Thursdays and all that bullshit. And so they were repping it, but they didn't instill the mentality. Like if the ball is there and there's an opportunity for a punch, we got to punch that bitch out. It's a mentality. You got to have that mindset. Some like Josh Norman, he just had the mindset of, if I see the ball, I'm going to try to punch it out. Everybody's not wired that way, where they're looking to create an opportunity for a turnover. Some guys are looking to take the football away, and some guys are content with a pass breakup. Like Benjamin St. Juice, to me, has always been a guy that has been content with a PBU, right? Which is why he didn't have any interceptions in college, which is why he only has one career interception, because he's content with, I'm going to just stick my arm out and have the ball hit me in the back of the arm instead of turning around and putting both of his hands up and potentially taking the ball away. The guys that are aggressive, who are, their mentality is, hey, the ball is in the air, it's mine. Those are the guys that are looking to take it away. To hell with a PBU, I want the ball. That's a mentality. And so you got to instill that in your players. That's what Ball is Life is all about. Can you get guys to mentally shift their thinking from, hey, on 3rd and 7, a pass breakup is good, it'll get us the ball back, to, nah, to hell with that. On this 3rd and 7, I'm trying to take this bitch away, because if I get the pass breakup on 3rd and 7, that's great. They got a punt. But now the punter's going to kick the bitch 50 yards. We get a 4-yard return, and that's 46 yards of field position that's being flipped. If I pick this bitch off on 3rd and 7 on a slant or a shallow cross, you know, and I'm able to jump it, I just saved us 37 yards of field position, and we're already in plus territory. It's a big difference between a PBU and a takeaway, right? And the sooner that these guys start thinking that way and they start adopting the ball is life mentality, the faster they're going to be able to adjust and adapt, and the better off this defense will be. And as a byproduct, the better off the offense will be, because they'll have better field position and more scoring opportunities. And then we'll see that number jump from 18 points a game to finally up over 20, hopefully closer to 24. Hey, how about that, right? Anyway, I digress. That was, and he said also, he brought this up because the person that asked the question brought up Dallas and how they were, you know, really high in the turnovers that they forced over the 3 years that Whitt and Quinn were in Dallas. And he said, you know, when I was at the other place, I love that he didn't even call their name. When I was at the other place, he said also that what people also fail to realize is we were number 2 in the league in tackling. You know, we were one of the best tackling teams in football. That's important, because I don't want guys going after the ball at the expense of missing a tackle, right? At the expense of tackling. Like, you got to secure the tackle first, and then you see that ball is exposed. You know, your teammate is wrapping him up. He's not going anywhere. Now you can go in and punch that puppy out, right? But we got to make sure we're doing the fundamentals right first. And tackling is paramount. We got to get guys on the ground first. And then in the process of getting them down, hey, there's the ball. It's a little loosey-goosey. Let's get that thing out of there, right? So he talked about that as well. So that was Joe Whitt Jr. in a nutshell. And then we got to Dan Quinn in his press conference, and he started off by talking about, you know, Joe Gibbs and Darrell Green being in attendance today, which was a treat for those in attendance. They addressed the fans at practice. They also addressed the team. Quinn talked about, he asked them to speak to the team. And so, you know what I said? I saw Coach Gibbs out there. I said, man, he ain't aged a bit. You know, Coach Gibbs, he still looks like he's about 45 years old, man. And blessings to him, bro. I love to see it, you know, for all that he's been through in his life, losing 2 of his kids already at such a young age, to endure the things that he's endured. He still looks great, man. Same with Darrell Green. It just looks fantastic. And we've seen him still moving out there. So Dan Quinn talked about the depth of the offensive line. That's something that we've talked about, you know, this particular episode, and how, you know, that's something that's a little bit questionable with this team right now. And, you know, Dan Quinn chose to go the optimistic glass half full route with the injuries right now, or just guys not being in the lineup. I don't even want to call it injuries, because I don't even know what's wrong with Brandon Coleman. I'm assuming, being that Sam Cosmi was sick, he's probably sick. That's my guess. But he talked about with, you know, camp, this is one of the beauties of camp, is when guys are out, it gives other guys an opportunity to prove their worth, you know? And so we're going to see what some of these other guys are able to do. And I'm like, hey, good for you, Dan. Way to put a positive spin on this. Personally, I don't need to see this shit. I mean, it's good, because what if this happens in the regular season? You want to know what you're getting yourself into. But at the end of the day, he even went as far as to say, It's better if a guy that has established himself is out, like a Cosme, for instance, or a Wiley, who you already know what you're getting from them, pretty much. He said the guys that get hurt the most by being out are the guys that haven't gotten a lot of reps. Those backups that need all the reps they can get to establish themselves and where they are and what kind of value they can provide to the team. It's more important for them to get all the reps they can get and be available than the guys that we know what they are. And so whether they miss practice or not, we already know what those guys can offer. So that does make a ton of sense. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, the depth of this offensive line is already questionable as is. More reps isn't going to hurt them, but I think it also exposes a weakness on this roster, which is we just don't have a lot of great offensive line depth per se. Pitch counts for the quarterback. He talked about, wanting to get all 4 quarterbacks reps in this upcoming preseason game versus the Jets. He said, obviously, the practice is going to help determine, how much, how many reps you're seeing from one quarterback to the next. Obviously, Jaden is going to get a ton of reps. Marcus is going to get, probably the rest of the mop-up duty in the joint practices in terms of reps. I don't think you're going to see Jeff Driscoll or Sam Hartman get a ton of reps. They may get a little some crumbs, some table scraps, but because they're going to be doing the heavy lifting in the game, right? So I think you're going to see most of the practice reps go to Jaden, and what he doesn't take, Marcus will clean up. And then in the game, it's kind of going to be the opposite, right? It's going to be the inverse. Jaden's going to take, a sliver off the top. Marcus is probably going to take, a quarter or so. Then you're going to see Jeff Driscoll and Sam Hartman try to clean up the rest of the game. If they had it to do their way, I think they would want Jaden to get one drive. If it's a successful drive, one and done. Get Marcus to clean up the rest of the, the first quarter, maybe into the second, get a drive or two himself, and then have Jeff Driscoll come in, clean up the rest of the first half, maybe into the, third quarter, and then have Sam Hartman play the whole fourth quarter, right? That's probably how they would want to divvy it up, but we'll see how it goes. But he said the intent is to get all 4 quarterbacks out there. He talked about the depth chart. Obviously, the depth chart with Dan Quinn this morning was a big topic of discussion because it had not been released yet. So a lot of questions kind of aimed towards the depth chart. Who was at the top, this, that, and the third. And so he was asked about the depth chart and what it signifies, and he said it's really about where we are right now, right? The depth chart is more about where we are right now. And clearly they didn't handcraft this depth chart. There are certain guys that, like you guys have mentioned this a bunch, that Percy Butler is the first safety off the bench right now. So if they were doing the depth chart, if Dan Quinn and company were doing the depth chart, he probably would have been one of the primary backups. He wouldn't have been listed as third team. But even, those small little, finite details, you're not really getting into that with the depth chart. It's more about, this is a reference point. It may not be 100% accurate, but it's not that far off. Essentially, this is where we are. This is not where we're ultimately going to be necessarily, but this is where we are right now. And let's see where the guys go from there, right? He was asked what he wants to see from Jaden in the preseason. And he's like, I really want to see the mental toughness. I want to see him continue to grasp the offense. Obviously, he's going up against different, defenses and things of that nature. So I want to see how he handles that. Obviously, now he's live. He can be hit. So you want to see him handle that. But he's like, more importantly, mistakes are going to be made. How does he overcome those mistakes? I want to see the mental toughness. I want to see that next play mentality. These are the things. And if he doesn't make any mistakes, great. He had an excellent preseason, but at some point, mistakes are going to happen. And I want to see how he overcomes that, right? He talked about Brandon Coleman. And he said Jaden Daniels, and Mike Sainristil, 3 rookies that were listed at the top of their respective positions on the depth chart, have earned the right to be starters to this point, right? Going into preseason game number 1 in the first unofficial Deppy. He said that Coleman has been fantastic. They moved him to right tackle. He showcased his ability to be flexible there. He came back to left tackle, has really played well. has shown the athleticism, the technique, and everything that they've asked him to do. They're really excited, but they now want to see him take all of those things and show them against a different unit and a Jets group that's going to be very aggressive getting after him. So he talked about all of those young guys really earning the right to be where they are right now. He also was asked about Jaden and if he has exceeded his expectations to this point. And he said, our expectations were really high for Jaden coming in. I knew the mental side of the game. He was going to have that, down pack because, that's the kind of kid he is. He's willing to put in the work. And, we kind of got that sense from him talking to other people that knew him during the process that this is who this kid is. He's very detail and process oriented, and he's going to put in the work to be prepared mentally. What we didn't know was how he was going to come out here and galvanize his teammates, how he was going to be a leader, how he was going to be able to come in here and be consistent day in and day out, the accuracy of the football, the commanding of the huddle, the ability to make checks at the line of scrimmage. These are things that we didn't know he was going to be able to do as quickly. And so he's exceeded our expectations, which is why he's number one on the depth chart right now. So he said that Jaden has exceeded his expectations to this point. I told you guys about the scheduling, so I don't really need to get into that again, but Tuesday practice today, Thursday joint practice, Saturday game. And Quinn says he likes that scheduling. He said when they were in Dallas, he kind of figured out that it was really good. When he was in Atlanta, they did it differently, right? The joint practices were multiple days. There wasn't a day in between, the practices and the games and things of that nature. So, for instance, I think we've seen the Lions and the Giants go after it in practice the last 2 days, right? And then they got the game tomorrow. So there wasn't a day in between. Whereas Quinn is like, I like the setup of us practicing Tuesday, because what they could have done is they could have took off for New Jersey today and had joint practices the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday. But he says, I like the day off in between. So we had practice today, day off, joint practice, day off, game, right? And then you have a day off after that. Then you get back to the practice field, right? So he likes that, having that recovery period for the guys after each of these, days heading into the joint practice and ultimately the game. Dan Quinn was asked about a players' council, which is almost like a veteran group of players, sort of like the little pledge that we heard about earlier this season, where the veterans kind of put together a standard for the team and what they need to follow in the bar and setting it at a certain level and, setting expectations and things of that nature. And so, Chick Hernandez asked him about a player council. Will you have that? And he's like, yeah, but not right now. He's like, right when we get around 70, I don't even know if they're ever going to get to 70. Remember, you don't have to cut the roster down to 70 anymore. It used to be you would go from 90 to 80 to 75, and then from 75 to 53. Now it's just 90 to 53, right? Because what used to happen was, because you cut the roster down, systematically, you would get to that final preseason game and you would be killing those guys that were left because you weren't going to play your starters. And so those guys would have to go, almost the entire game, and they'd be dog tired, right? So to eliminate that, to give you more options, to not put so much stress on those guys that are on the back end of the roster because you're not playing your starters in that final preseason game, they don't force you to cut the roster down anymore. You go from 90 to 53. So I don't know if there'll be a 70, per se. But and maybe he was talking about 70 because of the 53 on the roster and then the 16 or 17 guys you have on your practice squad. Maybe that's what he was referring to when he said, we'll wait till we get to about 70. That sounds about right, because I think the practice squad is like 16 guys or so now, and the 53-man roster. So you're right at 69. So that's 70. So maybe that's what he was referring to. If that's the case, he said, yeah, we're going to put together a group of veterans, because it's essentially the veterans policing the players, where the coaching staff doesn't always have to step in and, get on players and motivate them. It's better when you have players policing themselves. And as a coach, they know you're the authority figure. And as long as you're doing your job, you know that you ultimately have the final say. You wield the hammer, and at any point, if you need to slam it down, you can. But it's a lot easier if somebody's effing up or somebody's not giving maximum effort, instead of a coach having to go over there and tell them, the player goes over there and tell him, like, bro, hey, that shit ain't good enough, right? So he said eventually they will have like a players council. He talked about the moniker that he talked about on his introductory press conference, doing hard shit with good people. And he said that's a mentality, right? Where he said football is hard and there's a lot of sweating going on. He's like, it's going to be a lot of heavy lungs, hurting lungs, burning lungs, heavy legs, all of those types of things when it comes to putting in the work, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get that workout in, doing those things. But he said at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And if you're willing to put in the work and you're doing it with people that you love, that are part of the brotherhood, it's going to allow you to then be at your best. And when I thought about him talking about this, it made me think of a quote, one of my favorite quotes in terms of working together. There's a quote that I read somewhere. A wise man once said, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. If you want to go somewhere far, go together. There's power and strength in numbers. So I don't think there's a truer statement that I've encountered in my professional career than that, right? If you want to go fast, do it by yourself. You can get wherever, because you don't have to worry about dragging anybody else along. You don't have to worry about anybody else's input. You can do whatever you want to do. You can get there a lot faster. But are you going to go as far? Because you're handling all this stuff. It's going to bog you down. Can you find a way to pass out some responsibilities here or there and allow other people to do some of the work so that you can get even further, work together? That's what I kind of thought of when I heard him talking about that. He talked about Emmanuel Forbes Jr. and him not being a starter on this depth chart. And he said, look, this depth chart is a representation of where we are, but it's not 100% like accurate of where he's like, if it were up to me, I'd have about 15 starters, because I still haven't made up my mind on who's starting here, who's starting there yet, because there just hasn't been enough of a sample size, right? We haven't done enough. We haven't gone against anybody else. I don't have enough, evidence that this guy can or can't. So the decisions really haven't been made yet. So what you've seen in practice, you've seen a lot of Forbes out there with the starters, with Benjamin St. Juste and Michael Davis and Mike Sainristil. You've seen those three guys really, rotating in and out of the two outside corner positions. He said, and we've even been trying, Forbes a little inside as well, just to see what else he can do. We've been trying him on punts and kickoffs too. So he's like, we're doing a lot of different things just to see if can he do this? Can he not do this? Do we need to explore this more because he can do this, or do we need to scale it back? And do we need to just go back to plan A and B, which is let's keep the main thing the main thing. Let's not try to do anything else. That's kind of same mentality with Jamin Davis. Do we need to push and probe more with the edge rusher thing, or do we need to bring him back to plan A, which is, hey, he's an off-ball linebacker. Let's just keep him there. And so they're trying to figure out with a lot of guys. Jahan, they got him fielding punts, right? And Mike Sainristil, they got him fielding punts and kickoffs. Like, can we push more, or do we need to scale back and just say, hey, you just worry about this? So with Emmanuel Forbes Jr., it's a lot of that going on. But he's like, look, he's fine right now. We're going to find out a lot more about him in the coming weeks against the Jets and the Dolphins. But right now, he's fine. And then with the DBs, he talked about the defensive backs and, what he wants to see from them as a whole. He's like, 1, we got to tackle. 2, we got to take the football away. And 3, he's like, I want to see guys competing, getting after it. You know, we're going to get a lot of work against the Jets here in the joint practice in the preseason game in some one-on-one situations, because I don't see them playing a bunch of like zone and thing. They're going to mix up coverages, obviously, but I think they're going to turn them loose from a man-to-man perspective. You're going to see a lot of one-on-one drills in practice against the Jets. I think you're going to see a lot of instances where they're just going to play man coverage and see what they can do in terms of covering receivers, and trying to make it difficult for Aaron Rodgers and and all of those guys on that side of the football, Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams and all those guys that they have on offense. And so he wants to see how guys battle. But he also said at corner, you got to have selective memory. It's a next play mentality. You're going to get beat. It's just going to happen. Right? You're not going to play corner and be perfect. So how do you respond to getting beat, to giving up a play? You know, how do you get back in the fight? So that was really big for him in terms of the defensive backs. And he wants to see those guys compete because there's some separation that needs to take place, right? We still don't know who the fifth corner is. We still don't know who, are they keeping 5 safeties? Are they keeping 6? If they're keeping 5, who's the 5th safety? If they're keeping 6, then I think we know who the 6 safeties are. I don't think it's a question if it's 6. But if it's 5, who's the 5th safety, right? So a lot of questions, not a ton of answers right now, but he's really encouraged by what he's seen thus far. But again, the next 2 weeks are going to tell the story. And you got Rodgers this week, so that's great in the joint practice. And then next week, you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So these defensive backs are going to get work, and we're going to learn a lot about them over the next 2 weeks as to where they are in their process. And if they're not ready for the show yet, we'll know after the next 2 weeks. I feel pretty confident about that. So that's it for today's practice and the pressers. I got a couple of comments here, and then we'll get out of here. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Door Gunner, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, warming up my kicking leg. Will there be he said, we'll be there in the stands in week 1 in Tampa if needed. I trust the 2 kickers we have as much as I trust the gas station sushi. Wise man, smart man. I don't trust either one of them either. I've been adamant that I really don't trust Riley Patterson. I don't even know Ramiz Ahmed enough to say that I don't trust him. But the fact that he's been in the league and with multiple teams and never given a chance to actually kick a field goal in an NFL game tells me all I need to know. So I'm a little bit apprehensive towards embracing him. But this might be it. This may be the 2 kickers that we're choosing from. I still think there's an outside shot that they bring in another kicker that gets released from another team to upgrade the position. But hey, keep that leg warm, man. Keep that leg warm. They may call you out of the bullpen week 1 in Tampa. Miss P, been a member for 34 months, getting close to that 3-year anniversary. Who writes, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. So a simple PSA for everyone out there. Over 280 of you out there right now, but still less than 100 likes. Make it make sense. Hit the like button if you haven't already done so. Turn on that notification bell if you haven't done so. I told you this time of the year it can get sporadic. You've seen I've gone live twice in the span of 2 hours, right? So turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also, if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Not only do I cover the Commanders, but I cover the entire National Football League. But if you're looking for Commanders content, one-stop shop. It's all here, bro. So thank you for that public service announcement, Miss P. Colin Talk Sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Colin Talk Sports writes, if the football gods told you we were going 7-10 this year, but you got to choose the wins, what games would you choose? If I was told beforehand, hey, you getting 7, I would choose 4 in the division and then 3 outside of it. So I would I would sweep Dallas. I'd split with I'd probably take I'm lying. I'm lying like shit. I'd take 5 in the division. I want to sweep the Giants. They're not better than us, and I'm tired of them talking shit to me like they're good. I want to sweep the Giants, sweep Dallas, and I'd split with Philly. I'd split with Philly because I just need them to know, hey, we coming. And 7-10, going 5-1 in the division would put them on notice essentially. And then I want 2 of those games against the tough teams in the AFC North. Like going to Cincinnati and beating the Bengals would be huge, and then beating the Ravens, like something like that. Those would be probably the other 2 that I would take. I wanted to take another one outside of the division, but the division games are so important. It'll suck though, because if you beat Cincinnati, but then you lose to Carolina or you lose to Chicago, it's going to put a damper on some of those other wins, right? So it'd be tough. I'd probably have to scale back some of the division wins, but I want more of those because we deal with the division so much and the bragging rights that go along with, hey, shut up, we swept y'all, get out my face, right? I don't even want to talk to you. If you're not beating Carolina, if you're not beating Chicago, right? If you're losing to Arizona and those types of teams, that doesn't bode well for like how you feel about some of those other wins. Like, yo, we beat Baltimore in Baltimore. Yo, we beat Cincinnati in Cincinnati. But hey, don't talk to me. You lost to Carolina at home, bro. Shut up, right? You lost to Chicago. Like, I don't even know if Chicago's gonna be trash, but you get into that conversation too. I think it'd be, 2 games against AFC North opponents and then 5 in the division. Right now, I might waffle back and forth, take 4 in the division and add another one outside of the division games. But I want more in the division, and then I just take my chances with the other teams outside of it probably. I want to win in the division. It matters, right? It matters. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy JP writes, Lou, good to see you as always. Blessing us with Commanders and NFL content, man. I appreciate you, JP. Good to hear from you. Couple of questions. Do you like our running back or linebacker group more? And would you entertain us being trade deadline buyers? So your first question, I love the linebacker group way more than the running back group. I've already said that I don't think the running back group is super talented. They're going to have to change my mind this preseason because right now I see the 2 running backs in Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr., and then everybody else is just kind of meh for me right now. I was never a massive Chris Rodriguez Jr. fan, even though he's solid. And I do think he can play in this league, but I'm not a massive fan of his. And, I've seen enough of Jeremy McNichols to know that, yeah, he's all right. He ain't a true needle mover per se, but the linebacker group is loaded. I love the linebacker group. So it's linebacker without question. And then would I entertain us being trade deadline buyers? Absolutely, if it fit. What do I mean by that? It's either got to be one of 2 things. One, hey, we're a lot better than we thought we were, and we're in a position to do some damage this year. And this player could help us not only this year, because we're not winning the Super Bowl. Even if we're better than we thought, we're not winning the Super Bowl. So you're not looking for a 6-month rent or a 3-month rental like the Rams did with Von Miller. We're not looking for that. What we are looking for, though, is a guy that can help us this year and into the future. So if we were, say, at the trade deadline 6-2, and you're like, yo, all we need is another pass rusher. So you might say, hey, let's go get a pass rusher, right? Teams offering you a pass rusher for a 3rd-round pick, and you think this guy's young and you could re-sign him in the offseason, or he's got 2 years left on his rookie contract, whatever the case may be, then yeah, go be a buyer. But the other scenario is the Bears. I call it the Bears scenario, where we've seen the last 2 years, the Bears have been ass the last 2 years, but they've been aggressive at the trade deadline, adding young players that they feel like can be a part of their core moving forward. Now, they struck out and they missed and whiffed completely on Chase Claypool 2 years ago, but they didn't stop them from coming back the following year and trading for Montez Sweat, and that was a success. So the Bears said, we're not good, but we see this player as being a guy that we can add to our core, re-sign him in the offseason, and feel good about him. If you see a player like that, and you know you can re-sign him in the offseason, and you think he's going to be able to come in and help you, you can go. I wouldn't be opposed to going after him. The only thing is the price in season is a little bit steeper than it is in the offseason. Teams are trying to catch you being desperate. Oh, you think you got a chance to do something? Give me a second-round pick. You're much better waiting until the price is a lot more stable in the offseason. But if you can get a guy for a second or a third-round pick, like we traded Chase Young, right? Look how much better of a deal that was for us after the fact than it would have been after the season, right? So, yeah, I think there's ways to go about it, but I wouldn't mind being a buyer if they identify a player that they think can be a core commander moving forward that they can re-sign in the offseason. I wouldn't mind them doing that. Ed B, been a member for 35 months. Almost at that 3-year anniversary, who writes, sipping slowly, but the expectations are real. Keep sipping slow, man. Keep sipping slow. It takes discipline to sip slow. It's easy to lose discipline and start guzzling and get drunk. It takes true discipline to sip slow. So keep exhibiting that discipline and sipping slow. All right? Don't get caught up. King of the Bluegrass, been a member for 29 months. Truly appreciate you, King of the Bluegrass, who writes, did training camp change your mind any about boundary corner issues? Not yet. I need to see it in these joint practices in the preseason. I told you, I feel really good about Michael Davis. I don't know about Juice or I've heard he's had a strong camp, though. Or Forbes, right? I like Michael Davis. Michael Davis is not a Pro Bowl corner, though. Like, let's not get it twisted. He's going to get beat. He's going to have his fair share of games where he struggles, but I think he's going to make more plays than he doesn't. Now, if he's going to be that Ronald Darby player from 2020, Ronald Darby didn't get beat. Ronald Darby didn't really give up too much on that side. He definitely didn't give up nothing over the top. So, but they're telling Michael Davis to be aggressive and to press. If you're pressing and you're being aggressive, you're going to get beat over the top. You're going to give some shit up. Darby was playing off and keeping everything in front of him, and he stayed on top of everything because we were playing cover 3 a lot of that season. So we'll see. My expectations haven't changed at all, really. I'm still kind of in wait and see mode with the corners, specifically the boundary corners. I'm still kind of in wait and see mode. But I'm hoping to be more confident by the time the end of the preseason comes. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of Training Camp Confidential, Training Camp with the Washington Commanders. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I'll be live later on tonight for the Louie T Network podcast. Yeah, we got the Training Camp with the Chicago Bears, episode 1. We got the Brandon Ayuk situation. We got a ton to talk about. The camp fights that we've seen in these joint practices. We're going to preview the preseason week 1, that slate of games, all of that and more tonight on the Louie T Network podcast. Hopefully you will join me. But with that said, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I look forward to chopping it up with you. And you guys take care. God bless. Good night.